when Tina looked me straight in the eye and said, "You've already had your life. This is our time. Don't expect to live here if things go south for you." Something inside me went perfectly still. I smiled, nodded politely, and that very night I called my bank to freeze the $6,000 emergency fund I'd been keeping in their names. But that was just the beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The barbecue had started so beautifully that afternoon. The Tampa sun was perfect, not too hot, with just enough breeze coming off the bay to make everything feel right. I'd driven over to Brian and Tina's new house, the one I'd helped them buy with my entire $72,000 pension lump sum, carrying a cooler full of my late wife Margaret's secret recipe potato salad. Brian was manning the grill, flipping burgers with the same careful attention he'd had as a boy when I taught him to cook Sunday pancakes. "Dad, you really didn't have to bring all this," Brian said, but his smile was genuine as he hugged me. "The potato salad alone probably cost you $40 to make. Your mother's recipe," I reminded him, setting down the cooler. "She always said good food brings families together." Tina emerged from their sliding glass door, carrying a pitcher of iced tea. She looked radiant in her yellow sundress, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than her 32 years. "Arthur, perfect timing. I was just telling the neighbors about your amazing stories from the Postal Service." We sat on their back deck, the deck I'd helped Brian build with my own hands 2 summers ago, and talked about their plans. Brian had been working toward a promotion at the insurance company, and once it came through, they'd agreed he'd start paying me back $500 a month. It wasn't about the money, really. It was about family taking care of family. "Remember when you first showed me this house?" Brian asked, gesturing toward the backyard where they planned to install a pool next year. "You said it reminded you of the house you and Mom always dreamed of." "Still does," I said, watching a cardinal land on the fence post. "Margaret had always loved cardinals. Your mother would have loved seeing you two here, building your life together." Tina leaned forward, her hand on Brian's knee. "We've been talking about maybe starting a family soon. This house would be perfect for kids, don't you think? The schools in this district are supposed to be amazing. The best in Tampa," I agreed. "That's why the house cost what it did." We talked about names they liked for future children, about Brian's prospects for advancement, about the vacation they were planning to take once his promotion came through. Everything felt warm and right and exactly like the family dinners Margaret and I used to dream about when Brian was small. But then the conversation shifted. I mentioned casually that my own housing situation might need to change soon. My little apartment was getting expensive, and on my reduced pension income, every dollar mattered. "I'm not asking to move in or anything," I said quickly. "Just thinking out loud about maybe finding a smaller place or—" That's when the temperature dropped. Brian cleared his throat and looked away. Tina's smile became something sharp and cold. "Arthur," she said, setting down her glass with just a little too much force, "I think we need to be very clear about boundaries here." The cardinal flew away. "You've already had your life. This is our time." Her voice was steady, matter-of-fact, like she was explaining the weather. "Don't expect to live here if things go south for you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Brian stared at his plate. I felt something cold spread through my chest, starting from my heart and moving outward until my fingertips were numb. "I see," I said quietly. "It's nothing personal," Tina continued. "It's just that Brian and I need to focus on our future. We can't be responsible for everyone else's problems. Everyone else's problems. $72,000 of my life savings, and I was everyone else's problems." I stood up slowly, my legs feeling unsteady. "Well, I should probably head home." "Dad, wait," Brian started to say, but Tina cut him off with a look. "Thanks for the potato salad," she said brightly. "I'll make sure to get the bowl back to you." I walked to my car in perfect silence, got in, and drove home. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just drove, thinking about numbers and dates and exactly how much of my life I'd given to make this moment possible. Back in my small apartment, I sat in Margaret's old recliner and looked at the framed photo on the side table. It showed Brian's graduation from college, the college I'd paid for by working double shifts for 4 years straight. In the photo, he's wearing the cap and gown I'd bought him, holding the diploma I'd sacrificed for, standing next to the car I'd helped him buy. I remembered the exact amount, $47,332 for tuition and fees over 4 years. I'd kept every receipt, every payment confirmation, filed them away in the shoebox under my bed because Margaret always said to keep financial records for 7 years. 7 years had passed, but I'd never thrown them away. That was the same Brian who'd called me crying 3 years ago when his transmission died. "Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. The repair shop says it'll be $3,200, and I don't have it." I'd had it. I'd scraped together $3,200 from my savings. Money Margaret and I had set aside for a cruise we never got to take because her cancer came first. "Don't worry about paying me back right away," I told him then. Family helps family. 2 years ago, when Brian wanted to propose to Tina but couldn't afford the ring she'd picked out, a $5,800 diamond solitaire, I'd liquidated one of my retirement accounts early, paying penalties I couldn't afford. "She deserves the ring of her dreams," Brian had said. "And Dad, you know I'm good for it." I believed him, just like I'd believed him when he needed $2,100 for the security deposit on their first apartment together. Just like I'd believed him when he needed $1,800 to fix the air conditioning in that same apartment during the summer heat wave. And then came the house. "Dad, we found it." He called me on a Tuesday morning in March. "The perfect house, but we need to move fast. The seller wants a cash offer to close quick." The house was listed at $285,000. They had $13,000 saved. They needed my entire pension lump sum, $72,000 to make it happen. "Once I get my promotion, I'll pay you back $500 a month, Brian had promised. "It'll take 12 years, but every penny will come back to you with interest." 12 years. I'd be 76 by the time it was paid off, if it ever was. I'd done the math sitting right here in this chair. 72,000 plus 5,800 for the ring, plus 3,200 for the car, plus 2,100 for the deposit, plus 1,800 for repairs, plus the countless smaller amounts over the years: gas money, insurance help, groceries when times were tight. The total was $87,234. $87,234 of my life, handed over with trust and love to a son who now sat silent while his wife told me I'd already had my turn. But it wasn't just the money. It was what the money represented. I pulled out the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet and found Margaret's medical bills. During her final 6 months, when the insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatments, I'd spent $23,000 of our savings trying to save her life. Money that might have kept me comfortable now. Money that might have meant I wouldn't have to worry about whether my son would make room for me if I lost my apartment. Margaret had died holding my hand, whispering, "Take care of our boy, our boy." The same boy who couldn't meet my eyes when his wife dismissed me like a stranger asking for spare change. I sat there until the sun went down, feeling something I'd never felt before. Not anger. Anger was hot and loud and immediate. This was something else. Something cold and precise and patient. I thought about Margaret's last words to me, and I thought about the promise I'd made to her grave every month when I brought fresh flowers. "I'm taking care of Brian, honey, just like you asked." But who was taking care of me? I didn't cry that night. I opened my laptop and began making spreadsheets. By morning, I had a plan. The first thing I did was call my bank and put a freeze on the $6,000 emergency fund I'd maintained in Brian and Tina's names. Margaret and I had set it up when they got engaged, a safety net in case they ever faced a real crisis. The account was in my name but with their names as beneficiaries. One phone call and that safety net disappeared. The second thing I did was drive to see Harold Kremski, the lawyer who'd handled Margaret's will. Harold's office smelled like old books and coffee. He was 73, sharp as a blade, and had been practicing law in Tampa for 46 years. When I explained my situation, he leaned back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. "Arthur, let me ask you something," he said. "When you gave Brian that money for the house, did you sign anything?" "He wrote me an IOU on a napkin," I said. We were sitting in Denny's when he asked for the money. Do you still have the napkin? I pulled it out of my wallet. I'd been carrying it for 8 months, the paper soft from folding and unfolding. In Brian's handwriting, owe you Dad $72,000 for house. We'll pay back $500 per month starting when I get promoted. Love, Brian. Harold examined it like it was evidence in a murder trial. This is actually legally binding, he said. It's got a specific amount, a specific payment schedule, and both parties understood the terms. More importantly, you can prove you gave him the money because it came from your pension account directly to the closing attorney. So what can I do? You can file a lien against the house, Harold said. The property secures the debt. If they don't pay according to the agreement, you can force a sale to recover your money. A lien? I'd never considered that. How long would that take? In Florida? If they don't contest it, about 30 days. But Arthur, are you sure you want to do this? This is your son. I thought about Tina's words again. About Brian's silence. About Margaret's flowers on the grave. $15 every month that I paid for with money I could barely spare. He stopped being my son the moment he let his wife tell me I'd already had my turn, I said. Harold nodded slowly. I'll draft the paperwork. The third thing I did was visit my accountant, Betty Chun. Betty had been doing my taxes for 15 years, and she knew every detail of my financial situation. Arthur, I want to show you something, she said, pulling up files on her computer. Do you realize that over the past 5 years, you've given Brian and Tina a total of $91,847? $91,847. Even more than I'd calculated. That includes the gifts you claimed on your taxes, the loan payments you made on their behalf, and the house down payment. Arthur, you've given them more than twice your annual income for 5 straight years. What does that mean legally? It means if this goes to court, you can document a pattern of financial dependency. They owe you money, Arthur. A lot of money, and they have the assets to pay it back. Betty printed out 5 years of financial records, highlighting every transaction. The stack of papers was 2 inches thick. One more thing, she said. I ran their credit report. They listed you as a reference on several applications. They're carrying $43,000 in credit card debt. $43,000 in debt, on top of what they owed me. And Tina had the nerve to tell me I'd already had my turn. I spent the next week doing homework. I drove past their house every day, noting when they were home, when they left for work, when they had friends over. I watched their social media posts about dinner dates and shopping trips and weekend getaways, all funded, I realized, by money they should have been using to pay me back. Brian had gotten his promotion 6 months ago. 6 months of $500 payments I'd never seen. On Wednesday, I got a call. Dad. Brian's voice was tight with panic. There's some kind of problem with our emergency account. The bank says it's frozen. Is there? I kept my voice neutral. Dad, we need that money. Tina's car needs $1,200 in repairs, and we don't have it. That's unfortunate. Can you call the bank? I think there's been a mistake. There's no mistake, Brian. Silence on the other end. Dad, what's going on? I think you know what's going on. Look, about what Tina said at the barbecue. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. How did she mean it, Brian? We just need our space right now. We're still planning to pay you back. But when? When what? When are you planning to pay me back? You got your promotion 6 months ago. I haven't seen a single payment. Things are tight right now, Dad. The house payment is bigger than we expected. And things are tight. I almost laughed. Brian, I've been living on $1,847 a month since I retired. You make more than that in a week. Dad, please, we'll figure something out. I'm sure you will. I hung up. Friday morning, Harold called. The lien is ready to file. Are you absolutely certain about this, Arthur? File it. Once I file this, there's no taking it back without their consent. This will show up on their credit report. It'll affect their ability to refinance or sell. Good. Arthur. Harold, my wife died believing she was leaving her son in good hands. She died believing he would take care of me the way I took care of him. She was wrong. File the lien. Monday morning, Brian got the papers. He called me screaming. Dad, what the hell is this? A lien? On our house. It's a legal document securing the debt you owe me. You can't do this. This is our home. It's a home you bought with my money. You gave us that money. I loaned you that money. I have your IOU. I have the payment agreement. And I have 6 months of missed payments. We're family. You can't sue family. Watch me. Tina grabbed the phone. Arthur, you senile old bastard. You can't do this to us. Actually, I can. And I am. Brian, hang up on him. He's lost his mind. The line went dead. Within hours, I started getting calls from other family members. Brian had launched a campaign, painting me as a vindictive old man who was trying to destroy his son's life over money. My sister called. Arthur, what's gotten into you? Brian says you're trying to take their house. Brian owes me $91,847. I said calmly. I'm simply asking to be paid back. But he's your son. Yes, he is. And that's exactly why this hurts so much. My brother-in-law called. Margaret's sister called. Even Brian's old high school friends started reaching out, asking me to be reasonable. But the calls that really got to me were the neighbors. Tuesday afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez from next door knocked on my door. Arthur, I heard the strangest thing. Someone in the neighborhood is saying you've been acting confused lately. Leaving raw meat in mailboxes. Raw meat in mailboxes. That was a new one. Mrs. Rodriguez, have you ever seen me do anything like that? Of course not. That's why I'm asking. But Arthur, people are starting to talk. They're saying you might be, having problems with your memory. Wednesday, I ran into Tom Berkowitz at the grocery store. Tom lived 3 houses down from Brian and Tina. Art, hey, I wanted to ask you something. Tina mentioned you've been having some health issues? She seemed really concerned about you. What kind of health issues did she mention? Well, she said you've been getting confused about money, thinking people owe you things when they don't. And she mentioned some incident with pet food. Pet food now. The story was growing. Tom, do I seem confused to you? He looked at me carefully. No, Art. You seem fine to me. But sometimes families know things before the rest of us see it. By Thursday, I understood what was happening. Tina was conducting a whisper campaign, painting me as a senile old man having delusions about money and doing dangerous things around the neighborhood. If she could convince people I was mentally incompetent, it would undermine any legal action I took. It was actually quite clever. It was also a mistake, because Tina didn't know about the documentation I'd been gathering. She didn't know about Harold Kremsky's reputation in Tampa legal circles. And she definitely didn't know about the neighborhood watch meeting scheduled for the following Tuesday. I'd been a member of the Homeowners Association in my complex for 8 years. I'd never missed a meeting. I was the treasurer, in charge of keeping track of dues and expenditures. Everyone knew me as meticulous, organized, and completely reliable. The meeting was held in the community center at 7 p.m. 43 people showed up, including several neighbors from Brian's area who'd heard Tina's stories. When we got to the open discussion portion of the meeting, I stood up. I'd like to address some rumors that have been circulating about my mental state, I said calmly. The room went quiet. I opened my briefcase and pulled out my documentation. Bank statements, payment records, the IOU, Harold's legal filing, Betty Chen's financial analysis. For the past 8 years, I've served as treasurer of this association. In that time, I've managed $47,000 in dues and expenditures without a single error. Here are the audit reports proving it. I passed the reports around the room. Recently, my son and his wife have been telling people that I'm confused about money and having delusions about debts owed to me. I'd like to show you exactly what those delusions look like. I walked through the numbers methodically. $72,000 for the house, $5,800 for the engagement ring, $3,200 for car repairs. Every transaction documented with bank records. My son signed this promissory note agreeing to pay me back $500 per month once he received a promotion. He got that promotion 6 months ago. He has made 0 payments. The room was dead silent. Yesterday, I received a call from a neighbor saying my daughter-in-law claimed I'd been leaving raw meat in mailboxes to poison pets. I'd like to ask anyone in this room if they've ever seen me do anything remotely like that. Heads shook around the room. I'm not confused. I'm not senile. I'm not having delusions. I'm a 74-year-old man who gave his life savings to his son and discovered that generosity is sometimes mistaken for stupidity. I sat down. The room exploded in whispers. After the meeting, Tom Berkowitz approached me. Art, I owe you an apology. I should have known better. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged me. That girl should be ashamed of herself, spreading lies about you. But the person I really wanted to talk to was Janet Morrison, who lived 2 doors down from Brian and Tina. Janet, I need to ask you a favor, I said. Would you mind keeping an eye on my son's house for the next few weeks? I have a feeling things are about to get interesting over there. Of course, Art. And Art? For what it's worth, I never believed those stories. You've always been nothing but kind to everyone in this neighborhood. The next morning, I got a call from Harold. Arthur, they want to settle. What kind of settlement? They're offering to pay you $40,000 immediately and forgive the rest of the debt. 40,000 out of 91? That's less than half. It's a guaranteed 40,000, Arthur. If this goes to court, you might get everything, but it could take months and cost you legal fees. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No deal. Arthur. Harold, they had their chance to do the right thing. They chose to attack my reputation instead. No deal. What if they increase the offer? The only offer I'll accept is payment in full with interest on a schedule I approve. If they don't like that, they can explain to a judge why they think they shouldn't have to pay back money they borrowed. That afternoon, Brian showed up at my apartment. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, his clothes wrinkled like he'd slept in them. Dad, please, we can't afford to pay you back all at once. I didn't ask you to pay me back all at once. I asked you to pay me back $500 a month, like you promised. We don't have $500 a month. You have $500 a month for restaurants. You have $500 a month for entertainment. You have $500 a month for new clothes. I've seen your social media, Brian. That's different. How is it different? We need to live our lives, Dad. There it was again. The theme Tina had introduced at the barbecue. They needed to live their lives, and my financial survival wasn't part of that equation. Brian, do you remember when you were 12 and you broke Mrs. Patterson's window with a baseball? What does that have to do with anything? Do you remember what I told you? He looked away. You said I had to take responsibility for the things I broke. And what did you do? I mowed her lawn for 6 weeks to pay for the window. 6 weeks of work to pay for 1 broken window. You borrowed $91,000 from me, Brian. How much work is that worth? Dad, that's not fair. We're not 12-year-olds. No, you're not. You're adults. Adults who made adult decisions and signed adult agreements. And adults have to take responsibility for the things they break. Brian started crying. Dad, you're going to destroy our lives over this. I'm not destroying anything, Brian. You destroyed it the moment you decided that your father's financial security was less important than your wife's comfort. She's not comfortable. We're stressed all the time about money. Then you should have thought about that before you spent 6 months blowing off the payments you promised me. We were going to start paying you. We just needed a little more time. How much more time, Brian? Another 6 months? Another year? Another decade? He couldn't answer that. Brian, I'm 74 years old. I don't have decades to wait for you to decide my money is worth paying back. He left without saying goodbye. The court hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, I did something I'd been putting off for months. I visited Margaret's grave. The headstone was simple granite with her name, her dates, and the words beloved wife and mother. I'd paid $3,200 for it, money I'd scraped together by selling her jewelry. I knelt down and replaced the wilted flowers with fresh daisies, her favorites. Maggie, I think I made a mistake, I said to the stone. You asked me to take care of Brian, but I think I took care of him too much. I think I turned him into someone you wouldn't recognize. A warm breeze moved through the cemetery. I tried to be the father you wanted me to be, but somewhere along the way, I forgot to teach him to be the son you raised. I stayed there for an hour, talking to her about everything that had happened, about Tina's words, about Brian's silence, about the money and the lies and the legal papers. I don't know if you'd be proud of what I'm doing, I finally said, but I know you'd be disappointed in what he's become. When I stood up to leave, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you're doing the right thing, even when it hurts. The court hearing was held in a small courtroom with wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Harold sat beside me at one table. Brian and Tina sat with their lawyer at another. Their lawyer was young, maybe 30, with an expensive suit and nervous energy. He argued that the IOU was informal, that family loans weren't meant to be legally enforced, that I was being unreasonably harsh. Harold was 73 years old, wore a suit older than Brian's lawyer, and spoke with the quiet authority of someone who'd been practicing law since before most people were born. Your Honor, the defendant signed a promissory note agreeing to specific terms. He received $72,000 based on those terms. He has made 0 payments despite being employed and receiving the promotion that triggered the payment schedule. This is a simple breach of contract. The judge was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and reading glasses. She reviewed the documents for several minutes. Mr. Daniels? She said, looking at Brian. Did you sign this agreement? Yes, Your Honor, but did you receive the $72,000? Yes, but it was a family. Did you agree to pay $500 per month starting when you received a promotion? Yes, but did you receive a promotion? Yes. Have you made any payments? Brian's lawyer whispered something to him. No, Your Honor. The judge looked at Harold. Mr. Kremski, what remedy is your client seeking? Full payment of the debt, Your Honor. $91,847 including documented additional loans and expenses, or alternatively, foreclosure on the property to satisfy the judgment. Tina gasped audibly. The judge looked at Brian again. Mr. Daniels, do you have the ability to pay this debt? Your Honor, we don't have that kind of cash. But, do you own a house? Yes. What is it worth? Brian's lawyer answered. Approximately $320,000, Your Honor. So you have the assets to satisfy this judgment. But Your Honor, it's our home. Mr. Daniels, when you signed this agreement, did you intend to honor it? Of course, but then honor it. She banged her gavel. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $91,847 plus court costs and reasonable attorney fees. The defendant has 90 days to satisfy the judgment or the plaintiff may proceed with foreclosure. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Tina was screaming at Brian. This is your fault. You should have just paid him something. We don't have the money. Then we'll have to refinance the house. The lien makes that impossible. Don't you understand? He's got us trapped. They were still arguing when they got in their car and drove away. Harold put his hand on my shoulder. Arthur, how do you feel? Tired, I said honestly. But right. They'll probably refinance or take out a home equity loan to pay you. That'll mean they give up their renovation plans, maybe their vacation money for the next few years. Is that what you wanted? I thought about Tina's words at the barbecue, about Brian's silence, about Margaret's grave and the flowers I bought with money I couldn't spare. Harold, what I wanted was for my son to keep his word. What I wanted was for him to treat me with the same respect I'd always shown him. What I wanted was for him to be the man his mother and I raised him to be. And now I want my money back. The payment arrived 6 weeks later. A cashier's check for $94,233, the judgment amount plus court costs and Harold's fees, came with no note, no apology, no explanation. I deposited it into my checking account and sat in my car in the bank parking lot, staring at the receipt. $94,233. More money than I'd seen in one place since Margaret died. That afternoon, I drove to Sunset Gardens, a senior living community I'd been researching for months. It was beautiful. Tree-lined streets, a community center, a pool, organized activities, and most importantly, people my own age who understood what it meant to be alone after decades of marriage. The apartment I looked at was small but bright, with a view of the courtyard and a kitchenette perfect for one person. The monthly fee was $1,200, exactly what Brian had been paying for his car. "I'll take it," I told the leasing agent. "Wonderful. When would you like to move in?" "As soon as possible." 3 months later, I was settled into my new life. I joined the book club, started taking painting classes, and made friends with my neighbors. For the first time since Margaret died, I wasn't lonely. I was having dinner in the community dining room when my phone buzzed. A text from Brian. "Dad, can we talk?" I looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. 2 weeks later, another text. "Dad, please, I know you're angry, but we need to work this out." Deleted. A month later. "Dad, I miss you. Can't we put this behind us?" I set the phone aside and continued my conversation with Eleanor, my dinner companion. She was 78, a retired teacher whose husband had died 2 years ago. We were planning a trip to the art museum the following weekend. "Everything okay, Arthur?" she asked. "Everything's fine," I said, and for the first time in years it was true. 6 months after the court judgment, I was leaving the grocery store when I saw a familiar figure at the bus stop. Brian, wearing a work uniform I didn't recognize, carrying a lunchbox and looking older than his 34 years. I could have driven past. I could have pretended not to see him. Instead, I pulled over. "Brian." He looked up, startled. "Dad." Hi. Waiting for the bus?" "Yeah. Tina's car broke down and we can't afford to fix it right now. And my car. We had to sell it." I nodded. "Where are you working?" "Warehouse job. Loading trucks. The insurance job. They had layoffs." "I'm sorry to hear that." We stood in silence for a moment. "Dad, about the money. You paid me back. We're square." "That's not what I mean. I mean about everything that happened. About what Tina said. About how I handled it." I waited. "I was wrong. We were wrong. You deserved better." "Yes," I said simply. "I did. Is there any way, could we maybe start over?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was thinner than he'd been at the barbecue, his hands rough from manual labor, his eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with lost sleep. "Brian, when you were 12 and you broke Mrs. Patterson's window, what did I tell you? That I had to take responsibility for what I broke. And what did you do? I mowed her lawn until I'd paid for the damage. How did you feel when you made that last payment?" He thought about it. "Proud, I guess. Like I'd earned my way back." "Have you earned your way back, Brian?" He looked down at his work boots. "No, I don't think I have." "Then you have your answer." The bus pulled up. Brian climbed on, then turned back to look at me through the window as it pulled away. I drove back to Sunset Gardens, where Eleanor was waiting for me in the courtyard. We were going to watch the sunset together. Something she'd done with her husband every evening for 52 years, and something she'd started doing with me. "How was the store?" she asked. "Fine," I said, settling into the chair beside her. "Just fine." The sun was setting over Tampa Bay, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Margaret would have loved. I thought about her last words to me, about taking care of our boy. I had taken care of him. I'd spent 34 years making sure he had everything he needed, including the hard lessons about responsibility and consequences that would serve him for the rest of his life. Maybe that was the most loving thing I could have done. The last light faded from the sky, and Eleanor reached over to squeeze my hand. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "Yes," I agreed. "It really is." Behind us, the community center was filling up with residents gathering for evening activities. People my age who understood loss and resilience and the importance of building new chapters when old ones end. I was 74 years old, and I was finally living my life on my own terms. Not as someone's father or someone's creditor or someone's problem to be managed, just as myself. And that, I thought, was exactly what Margaret would have wanted for me. If you liked this story, please like this video.